Hi. It was quite an adventure yesterday, wasn't it? When they were up in the land of snow and ice, and the magic snowman stormed his way into the house and demanded that he stay there. And Moonface, that's right, Moonface was very clever because he lit the fire and he kept it stoked, didn't he? That means that he kept it full of wood and made it nice and hot. And what happened to the magic snowman? Can you remember? That's right, he melted. Because even though he was magical, he was still only made of snow. And he melted in that house because he was so insistent that he stay in it. Silly snowman. But they made it home, they got the house home, and Beth, Joe and Franny went home and collapsed into their bed. And I do wonder if they'll want to go back to the magic faraway tree at all. But I think they might. So let's get ready for our story tonight. Take a couple of lovely big breaths so that we're ready for me to read and for you to relax. Here we go. One more. I'm ready. Hope you are. So this is chapter 13 and it's called Moonface Gets into Trouble. Oh dear. The children didn't really feel that they wanted to go to any of the lands at the top of the faraway tree for a little while. It was a bit too exciting to climb through the clouds and see what was above them. But they did want to see their friends in the tree, especially dear old Moonface. So the very next time they had a day to themselves, they set off through the enchanted wood to the faraway tree. There was no rope to guide them this time. It was only at night that the rope was swung through the boughs to help the woodland fairy up and down. To help the woodland folk. The children began to climb up. Every door and window in the tree seemed shut today, and not a soul was about. It was quite dull climbing up the tree. Even when they reached Silky's house, that was shut too, and they couldn't hear Silky singing or anything. They knocked, but there was no answer. So on they went up to Moonface's, keeping a good look out for Dame Washalot's dirty water to come swishing down on them. But not even her water appeared that day. It all seemed very quiet and peaceful. They reached Moonface's house at the top of the tree and knocked at his door. But nobody answered it. But inside they could hear quite well somebody was crying. It was very mysterious. "It doesn't sound like Moonface," said Franny, puzzled. "Let's go in and see who it is." So they opened the door and went in. And it was Silky, sitting in a corner, crying bitterly. "Whatever's the matter?" said Joe. "And where's old Moonface?" asked Franny. "Oh dear," sobbed Silky. "Moonface has been thrown into some dreadfully strange land at the top of the faraway tree because he was rude to Mr. What's-his-name down below." "What? That old man who's always sitting in a chair and snoring?" said Beth, remembering that they hadn't seen him that day. "Whatever did Moonface do?" "Oh, he was very naughty," said Silky. "So was I. You see, we heard Mr. What's-his-name snoring as usual. We crept up to him and saw that his mouth was wide open. And, oh dear, we popped a handful of acorns into it. And when he woke up, he spluttered and popped, and then he caught sight of us hiding." "Goodness! Did you really dare do such a naughty thing?" cried Beth. "No wonder he was angry." "Moonface is dreadfully bad sometimes," said Silky, wiping her eyes. "He makes me naughty too." "Well, Moonface's house, and I got in safely, but Moonface didn't. And Mr. What's-his-name caught a hold of him and threw him right up through the clouds and into the land that is there today. Dear. Good gracious! Well, can't he get back? Said Franny in alarm. He can climb down the ladder and surely back into the tree. Yes, he could, said Silky. But you see, Mr. What's-his-name is sitting on the ladder, ready to catch him and throw him back up. So what's the use of that? Goodness me, she's very squeaky today. What land is up there today? Asked Joe. The land of the old saucepan man, said Silky. He lives there in his cottage with his pots and pans, and he's quite harmless, but you see, Mr. What's-his-name will sit on the ladder until the land swings round and another one comes. And then Moonface won't be able to get back and he may be lost forever. Oh dear, said Joe in dismay, and the girls stared at Silky in despair, for they were really very fond of old Moonface now. Isn't there anything we can do? Asked Joe at last. Well, there is just one hope, said Silky, fluffing out her lovely golden hair. The old saucepan man is a great friend of Mr. What's-his-name's, and if he knew his land was at the top of the faraway tree, he might come along and have a cup of tea with Mr. What's-his-name, and then Moonface could slip down the ladder then. Oh, said the children and looked at one another. They could quite well see that this meant one or all of them going up the ladder again and getting into another peculiar land. I'll go, said Beth. After all, Moonface helped us last time. We must help him now. We'll all three go, said Joe. So they set off up the topmost branch of the little ladder. There they found Mr. What's-his-name sitting, reading his newspaper and brewing a pot of tea that sent swirls of steam up through the hole in the clouds. Please, can we pass? Asked Beth timidly. No, you can't, said Mr. What's-his-name rudely. Well, we've got to, said Joe, so if we tread on your feet, you must excuse us. Mr. What's-his-name simply wouldn't move. He really was a very cross old man. He grumbled and growled at each of the children as they squeezed past him, and they were very glad when they climbed through the hole and were in the land above. So this is the land of the saucepan man, said Franny when they were standing on the grass safely. What a funny land it is. And it was. It was an island floating in what seemed a sea of white. It wasn't really much bigger than a large field. Beth went to the edge and looked over. Goodness, she said in alarm, it's like a cliff, and the sea is a big white cloud. Don't get too near the edge, anybody, but it wouldn't be nice to fall off. Hey, hey, suddenly yelled an excited voice. They turned around and saw Moonface waving to them and running hard towards them. Hey, how did you get here? Hello, we came to see what we could do for you, said Joe. We heard what had happened. Old Mr. What's-his-name is sitting on the ladder still, waiting for you. But Silky says this is the land of the saucepan man, who is a great friend of Mr. What's-his-name. So we've come to see him and ask him if he'll go down and have tea with his friend, and then you can slip down safely and go home. Oh, good, said Moonface joyfully. I didn't know what land this was, and goodness me, I was quite afraid of falling off it. It's so small. Where do you suppose the old saucepan man lives? I can't imagine, said Joe, looking around. All he could see was a very large stretch of grass, with no house and nobody at all in sight. Where in the world could Saucepan Man be? "We'll have to go carefully all around this funny little land," said Beth. "His house must be somewhere, but we'd better hurry, for you never know when the land will swing away from the faraway tree, and we don't want to live in this odd little place forever." They began to walk round the land. Presently they came to a cliff that was not quite so steep as the others. They peered over it, and Joe pointed to some things stuck on the cliff. "Whatever are those?" he said. They looked like some sort of steps down the cliffside. "They're saucepans," said Franny suddenly. "Yes, saucepans, with their handles stuck firmly into the cliff and the pan part to tread on. How strange." "Well, this must be the way down to Saucepan Man's house," said Joe excitedly. "Come on, be careful, girls, or you may fall right over the edge of the cliff of this land." So very carefully they began to climb down the cliff, treading on the saucepans stuck into the earth. It really was rather funny. They got down at last, and then they heard a very curious noise indeed. It was the sound of crashings and bangings and clatterings and clangings. The children were quite alarmed. "The noise is coming from just around the corner," said Joe. They crept very cautiously to the corner and peeped around. There they saw a crooked little house with a saucepan for a chimney. The noise came from inside the house. The children crept to the window and looked in. And inside they saw the strangest little man that they had ever seen, dancing the strangest little dance. He had saucepans and kettles hung all over him. He wore a saucepan for a hat, and he crashed 2 saucepans together as he danced. "Do you think he's dangerous?" said Joe in a whisper. And that's the end of the chapter. So they found Saucepan Man. He does sound very odd, doesn't he? With saucepans hanging off him and kettles and a saucepan for a head. No, for a hat. And clanging saucepans together. Oh, can you imagine the noise? But he does sound very happy though. If he's singing and dancing, he doesn't sound like he's angry. Not like the polar bears when they were angry, or the magic snowman when he was cross. I'm very interested to meet him. I think we'll settle down now. We'll take our big breaths and we'll get ready for sleeping. We'll get ready to imagine what your Saucepan Man might look like. Are his saucepans silver? Or are they golden like brass ones or copper ones? I wonder. Or maybe they're all sorts of different colours. What do you think? Are they hanging just from in front? Maybe he's got them on his back. How does he sit down if he has saucepans hanging from his legs? These are funny thoughts. I think we should have a dream tonight about Saucepan Man. So take a couple of lovely big breaths, ready to settle down and have some very odd dreams about a Saucepan Man. Big breath in. One more as we relax, ready for sleeping. Heads down, relaxing. See you tomorrow.